Hey, everybody. Welcome. I see everybody coming in now. This is exciting. We'll, of course, give everybody a couple minutes to get settled, and then we will get going on our webinar today. And maybe marketing. Mari is the woman behind marketing, the Ambition marketing team. So maybe give us the thumbs up too and chat when you think we're ready to get going. All right. Okay, I got the green light. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Modernizing Enablement, how to train your sellers to articulate purpose. We have an awesome panel here today to talk about some best practices happening out there in the industry. But before we get started, I thought I would actually open it up to the chat and first ask, I've been talking to a lot of folks about enablement. And what is enablement? How would you define it? I'd love to see some chats come through and see what does enablement mean to everybody. Sammy? Great. Prepping your team for success. Love that. Skills. Hi, Meyer. I know Meyer Wilson. He's a friend.
I love how succinct these answers are.
Yeah, we've got these definitions down. All right, well, I'm going to move and share this great visual that we found from Forrester. And the way Forrester describes sales enablement in these three buckets: sales competence, sales confidence, and sales content. And actually, a lot of the items I think that folks put in the chat can hit several of these buckets. And the goal of addressing these three would be obviously to create extraordinary buyer interactions and to optimize the contribution of every rep on the team. And what we're learning about enablement is it's not just for sales, for AEs, it's for the entire revenue team. And we're supporting SDRs, AEs, customer success, implementation teams, all across the revenue org to create that confidence and greater productivity across the team. Okay, so I'm going to now introduce the panel real quick. My name is Erin Tomlinson. I should have introduced myself at the beginning. I lead the RevOps and enablement function here at Ambition, and I'm excited to host this group of individuals today. I'm going to pass right over to Jonas and have him describe his role.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Jonas Taylor, and I'm the manager of Global Revenue Enablement at Lattice. I'm calling in from Boulder, Colorado today. I'm a digital nomad, so maybe I'll be touring in your town soon. So Lattice, we're about 500-ish employees. We're supporting a go-to-market org a revenue org, so sales, SDRs, BDRs, solutions consultants of about 155. And we have a go-to-market enablement team 6, but I lead the sales enablement side. So way our enablement team is set up at Lattice is we have a sales enablement leader, CX enablement leader, but we're umbrellaed under go-to-market enablement. Obviously, there's a lot of scenarios where we're collaborating, but both teams have very different needs oftentimes. So that's why we have them as separate functions. So one thing I'll call out, and then I'll hand it off to Mallory, is my definition for sales enablement. So I think sales enablement's a function. Technically, everybody can enable revenue, right? Everybody can enable sales. If you're a product manager, you release a new product, hey, that could drive new biz. If you're a really good salesperson, you want to train other salespeople, you could also enable them. But enablement as a function is a totally different thing. We do change management for strategic go-to-market initiatives. We're more than onboarding. We're more than content. We do the program and change management necessary to drive leadership-sponsored business outcomes. So really excited to talk more about that later. But thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jonas. All right, Mallory.
Yes, hi, nice to meet you guys. I am not even going to be able to compare to that definition, Jonas. I love it so much. I am joining today from Denver, Colorado, actually, in a WeWork phone booth. So if I sound a little funny, my apologies, but I am traveling I lead revenue operations at Nylas. I've been at the company for almost 3 months on the dot. So very exciting. I'm learning all about developers and APIs, and it's a new market for me that I've been enjoying. I found my way to revenue operations through marketing operations, and I've seen a lot of different setups in which sales enablement and revenue enablement can either be housed under revenue operations or even under marketing in the past. So my goal, regardless of where it sits, is to just be very tightly partnered with that enablement function and help identify the areas where we need enablement. Is it working? And then to give the resources that that team needs to understand success. So happy to be here today.
Thank you. And to bring us home, Josh.
Awesome. Thanks. I'm Josh Scott. I am also in Colorado, but I live here. I'm in Colorado Springs. We have the Colorado contingent today, and I am the manager of enablement at Seismic, and I support all of our post-sales teams. So that includes customer success managers, account managers, our customer experience team, adoption teams, and our services teams. You may notice that I just listed off a bunch of post-sales teams. We also have team members on our enablement team who support our entire sales org as well. So we're very lucky in having a very large enablement team. We've got about 22 people on our enablement team split into field enablement, product enablement, partner enablement, and onboarding. And we support our entire organization go-to-market. And what I really love about how we approach enablement is that we have taken our company values and weaved it into what we're trying to do with enablement, which is help empower our teams to really drive great customer experience. And we're doing that through being inclusive, through being vulnerable with our teams, while also doing all of the really amazing things that Jonas just pointed out when it comes to aligning to those strategic outcomes that our business is trying to achieve. So I'm really excited to be here today, and that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, everybody. What a great group and some awesome companies represented. So I know there's going to be some amazing best practices. All right, let's jump to the next section. So everybody's hearing a lot about enablement right now. I think, I know it's tough out there in the tech industry with layoffs and things like that, but you know what? I feel like enablement is the area where people are growing and hiring because we have this feeling right now of we need to get more out of the teams that we have. We need to support our employees and make sure they're having a great experience. And so found this other Forrester chart that I thought was really interesting about the increasing responsibility of enablement and really what's going on just in the market right now. There's a lot of pressures out there, both internally and externally. When we think about the internal pressures, it goes back to, again, sellers and any revenue creating customer facing team members need to know more, not just about their product, but about the sales process and the skills that they are bringing to the table every day. We have to retain our customers. And so Josh, I know we'll be talking a lot about how we support that post-sales motion. And then there's just more pressures internally with potentially less resources, less tools as people are, looking to optimize their stacks. And so where does enablement fit in to kind of bridge the gap there? When we think about external, obviously our customers are under a lot of pressure. Our prospects are under a lot of pressure. They have more pressures internally, which may be changing the buying process. New stakeholders are involved in decision making. And, at macroeconomic factors that are changing the way that people think about budgets and ROI in their buying decisions. So as we think about all of these external and internal pressures, let's talk a little bit about how these enablement and RevOps teams with Mallory are thinking about this and how they're pivoting their organizations and their priorities to meet this new climate. So a couple ways that we're looking at enablement taking us through this economic uncertainty. And I think the first thing is, how do we know what the priority is? Where do we focus our efforts? And so to kind of kick off this discussion, I thought it would be great for Jonas to kick this one off about how are you identifying the enablement priorities for Lattice, and what does that look like this year?
Love this question. Because if everything's a priority, well, then you don't have any priorities. So the way we typically define priorities at Lattice is like my priorities. So sales enablement's priorities are the same as our leadership team's priorities. And, you know, if I was to go back to like my definition of an enablement program, and this is like very academic, is it's an interrelated, often interdependent collection of work streams, projects, training initiatives, whatever. And we manage all of that together as a program to achieve a business outcome. And so typically sit down with the leadership team, understand what our business priorities are for the year. Maybe that's improving top of funnel conversion. Hey, maybe that's reducing our slip rate, right? We're pushing a lot of pipeline when we thought it was going to close 1 month. And we're pushing it to the next month and the month after. And we all know from a ton of sales research that that pipeline that we push has a less rate, worse chance of closing as we would just close it in the current month. And so for me, like enablement initiatives are like reverse engineered from the business outcomes like we're trying to achieve that come from leadership. And we work really closely with like, I'll use like top of funnel as an example, is we work really closely with ops and other cross-functional teams to build out that program that we're going to support that priority. And what you typically want to start doing is define the goal. We want to improve top of funnel conversion. Then we want to start looking at what's the process gap for that. What's the skill gap? What's the knowledge gap? What's the external content gap, right? Process gap could be something where BDRs and AEs are struggling with a handoff. And there's some things we need to fix in Salesforce. Enablement will work closely with ops to ensure that happens. If there's a skill gap, enablement needs to build a training initiative around that, and then enable managers on the coaching that we have to do to ensure that that behavior change sticks. So that's typically how I look at like enablement priorities, is it's not just going to be, you know, sales training. It's not just going to be onboarding. It's not just going to be content and asset management. Those are all really important things that I'd say enablement does. But at the end of the day, like everything we do is in service of a business outcome that our leadership team has defined as a priority.
I love that how you describe that. And in fact, I had sneak peeked this slide. We had done a survey and got some feedback about what are the top priorities for enablement teams this year. And you can kind of see all the different topics there, with sales training and onboarding and coaching being amongst the top two. And the way you described it, Jonas, was really interesting, because I think what you're saying is it's not really one or two of these things. It's that the programs that enablement puts together in combination with our stakeholders, the sales revenue leaders and our RevOps team, when it comes to prioritization and measurement, it's really all of these things put together. And depending on the topic, you may leverage more of the training aspect or more of the asset management, but it's very dependent on what the needs of the business are. As we were talking about these different priorities, Josh, I remember you saying that you guys are focused a lot on coaching, and I'd love to hear more about coaching and what that means at Seismic and how you guys are focusing on that as a priority.
Absolutely. So I'm going to back up just a little bit to our planning going into this current fiscal year. Our leadership team on the enablement team and then our leadership team for the go-to-market org have worked really closely together on aligning to what are we going to work on this year and where are we going to really put our focus. And so one of the things that came out of this, and we're going to talk about this later, so I'll just tease it a little bit, is outcomes and really driving outcomes with our customers and shifting to a very customer-centric experience so that we're really thinking about creating a great experience. And since I'm on the post-sale side, I'm very concerned about not just booking the deal, but then what happens after that. And so we're thinking about the customer journey from start to finish, not just from when we get the lead to when we book the deal. That's really important, obviously, but also thinking about what happens after that. So we're really trying to shift that focus into creating a great customer experience. And so I say all of that because part of that is going to come from coaching. And we really want to hone in on leveling our managers up to be better coaches. And I think that if everyone steps back and kind of looks at your org, that you are being asked to potentially do more with either the same amount or with less. So how do you get your reps to perform at that level with only one of you, with only, so many on your team? And I think it comes through coaching. And so we're really doubling down on improving the ability for our managers and our frontline leaders to coach their teams to better results, and to really all be centered around this idea of one team, one approach from start to finish. That also ties in with our theme for the year when it comes to outcomes. And so I think the coaching piece is a really pivotal moment for managers to shift from just telling and giving advice and giving feedback to actually empowering their reps to go out and do this on their own and replicate it over and over again and get those results without needing that, like, here's what you do to fix this, or here's how I would do it. Because that's not, in my mind, that is not the true coaching motion that we want our managers to be able to scale to their teams. So I think that's one part of it. And then on the individual rep side, we're also focusing on leveling up our teams to be better at discovery. And I think that I'm not going to steal the thunder, because I think we're going to talk a little bit about discovery in a little bit. But discovery also for our teams is really important to uncover those outcomes, to, again, create that really fluid start to finish experience for customers. So for us, those are the two key themes: are leveling up our managers on the coaching side, leveling up our individual contributors on their expertise when it comes to uncovering outcomes and really creating that great experience for our customers.
I love that. It's I think a great point around enablement may just be one or two people supporting many, many managers. And so if we don't have a great handoff there to the leaders and enable not just the frontline reps, but the leaders as well, our programs probably won't be successful. Mallory, I loved your comment. I saw it in the chat about the difference between training and coaching. And I think from your RevOps perspective, how do you help the enablement team figure out where to focus? And then how do you think about the difference between training and coaching?
Yeah, that's a really important difference, I think, because there's a question of who owns each of those and when is each of them best suited for the type of program that you're putting together. So to Jonas's point, I think all of these are like levers that can be part of, a fully functional program that you might have for enablement. The thing that I try to focus on up front with our teams is that prioritization. And so if you've got 10 possible programs that you could run, how do you pick the one that's most important to tackle first? I always try to get closest to the revenue first and kind of build out from there. So if we've got an opportunity to get better at our paperwork process and closing deals, let's tackle that first before we worry about top of funnel, because I don't want to optimize my top of funnel and send a bunch of demand to a broken closing process. So I think it's really important as a team to come together and look at the data to see what is the thing closest to the revenue that needs the most work. And that's something that, it does take a lot of partnership across the executive team, across the people who are in the trenches day to day. You need to get that feedback. And then on the ops side, my focus is to help provide that prioritization, but then also, come together with enablement to get that plan and then help enablement measure if it has been successful or not. So we may need Salesforce development to get those things to become more measurable so we know if we're doing it right. And I think the biggest difference for me between like the training and the coaching is that change management that we talked about. So if I have decided that I need a big change in my sales process, I'm going to work through a program to get that curriculum built. I'm going to work with the enablement team to train everybody and to help manage the change of, hey guys, we're doing something new, we're doing something different. When we turn the corner into coaching, I think that ops needs to provide all of the leading indicators so that managers have the tools to say, yes, this is going well, or no, this is not going well. If I can see a red flag, I can coach on it. If I get proactive, I can catch things before they become a problem. And really, that's an indication that the change management or the training didn't stick for that one person. So let's get ahead of it. But I think that, at least from my standpoint on the ops side, like the training and the change management comes first. And then without the right tools, you might not be able to coach on it very effectively. So it does take both.
I love how you brought in the data element and, supporting the managers with the data they need to have informed coaching conversations. I think sometimes when you think about how a lot of managers perform is they just go into one-on-ones, how's it going, what's going on, but if you can come to those with a very specific set of data on the leading and lagging indicators and say, I'm seeing in the numbers that this is happening, let's talk more specifically about that. It will be probably a much more effective coaching conversation. So appreciate that perspective. Okay.
I agree. And actually, Erin, without that, what happens is that the sales manager just sits on every single call. I don't know if you guys out there have experienced this, but I have. Like, the manager doesn't know how to coach if they don't have the right data. So they just attend every single call because they're scared they're going to miss something. And that's not a great use of everybody's time.
Yeah, and it takes away that autonomy from the rep and those learning experiences, which are so important in their development. Great. If you don't know where to start, this is my ambition marketing plug. After the webinar, we're going to send out this enablement audit framework. This is something I put together when we were kicking off enablement at Ambition of where do you focus if you're brand new to enablement or aren't sure what priorities to look at. And this is a tool that can help you do that. So stay tuned for that after the webinar. Josh talked a little bit about discovery, and I think another data point we're seeing is that folks aren't real confident in their message right now. And I think the messages are shifting quickly. How do we get the teams ready to have the right message out there in the market that may be a different message than we were talking about last year? This statistic talks about telling stories versus just data, which I think is super important. This is from that same survey we talked about earlier, but 88% of consumers say they either find sellers ineffective or only had 1 or 2 meaningful conversations with a rep last year. So folks are going into these conversations not confident that they're going to have a great experience, which again, trying to put some pressure on the enablement and leadership teams to make sure that we are providing those amazing customer experiences. Here's another one that companies are not confident in the story that they're telling the market right now. I think it's the market's shifting fast. Are we shifting our story fast enough is kind of what I take from that. So jumping in, I think we talk a little bit about discovery, articulating purpose. How are we doing that and how are we shifting our team's message today? Josh, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I would love to. So before I do that, though, I want to ask everyone, because one of the themes I'm going to talk about is outcomes. And I would love to hear from everyone. What is an outcome in your mind? And just generally speaking, how do you define it in your org or within yourself? And I'll wait for a couple answers to come in here into the chat. I know there's at least one person in the audience who can give me a good answer because I work with her and she loves outcomes. Measurable result, top line revenue. Thomas, I really love measurable result. That's getting along the idea of what we're going to talk about. A desired end goal you're moving towards, desired end state with clearly defined inputs. Tangible result when employees have gone home at the end of the day. Yeah, I think we're all centering around like this idea of it being a goal that we're working toward. One of the really important components of this, it could be qualitative or it could be quantitative. Either way, we also want to make sure that there's a time component to it, because if I just say we want to increase our ACV, okay, well, great, but when, how long is it going to take us to get there? And I think one of the things when we think about purpose for our company, for Seismic this year, is we're shifting our narrative to talk specifically about outcomes with our customers. And I think regardless of the macroeconomic state that we're currently in, that talking about outcomes with your customers drives better storytelling around what's going on in their organization. So that ties back to the slide from the tweet from Adam Grant about remembering stories versus remembering stats. Now, stats and data are a really important part to that, but Seismic this year is really shifting to think solely about outcomes going into this year. And we're shifting our entire narrative. And we've planned out the first 3 quarters of the year to really empower and enable our teams to tell the story of outcomes. And that means with our sales teams, getting them to uncover the outcomes that customers are trying to achieve, not just pitching the product to them. I think historically, we have sometimes been a product-led organization. We have a fantastic product, but what really matters to the customer is what are they trying to achieve? They're going to use our tool, but what is it that they're trying to get to at the end of the day? Are they trying to improve rep performance in X domain, or are they trying to increase their employee satisfaction with our learning and coaching tools? Whatever it is, I think having it driven by outcomes will just create a greater purpose, which ultimately ends up making it stickier for your customers to stay with your product or to stay with your team, because they have that connection of we're working toward this greater thing than just purchasing software. And I think that that's really what we're trying to drive home with our teams as we go into this new fiscal year, is really thinking about outcomes and how we help our customers measure them.
Love that. I think we used to always talk about pain, what's the pain and how do we overcome the pain?
Yeah.
I like the shift to focus less on the pain and more on the outcome, because I think outcomes are often tied to a company initiative that the company needs to achieve, and people are buying for company initiatives more than they are to eliminate pain right now. So that's an important shift to make to produce better results in conversion. So Jonas, I'd love your perspective on this and what's happening over at Lattice.
Yes, of course. I love everything Josh said. Like, it's something like I'm really passionate about. One, being like an enablement, two, also being a software buyer. Like, it's really painful to get on a sales call and you show me 2-3 slides and then go right into a product demo. Like, the entire sales cycle should be built, in my opinion, around really good discovery. We do really, really good discovery. And if I could make a hoodie, I would. Hashtag quantify the pain. Like, let's quantify the pain. It'll help you build a more personalized, tailored demo. It'll help you late stage in pricing and negotiations for me to be like, hey, remember all this like conversation we had and where I kept asking you a bunch of annoying questions, and we've quantified that you have a $500,000 problem. Now, would you like to buy my $20,000 software? Is a totally different conversation from, hey, so it's going to cost $20,000 for this software platform. You're like, wait a minute, what? Sticker shock. Whoa. So I'm so passionate about that. And I just want to +1 everything Josh said there. And it's a big focus of ours at Lattice right now, which is especially like in the HR, like software buying space. A big reason people used to buy Lattice, right? And I think a lot of CFOs and CEOs still do, was to reduce regrettable attrition. Well, the whole concept of like reducing attrition right now when the job market like isn't uber hot it's a very different conversation, right? There's been a huge shift. And so one thing that we're doing right now to enable our sellers in the current moment is we're doing an internal webinar series. So we're bringing in CFOs and CEOs from external companies that are Lattice customers to actually come in and talk to our go-to-market teams about what are their 2023 or if you're on a fiscal year, an FY24 priorities. Like what are their business priorities? What are they thinking about when they are making purchasing decisions? What are the things they're looking for from either their vendors or from sellers to guide them on why they should be making this purchase? This internal webinar is just allowing us to really get in the heads of the individuals we sell to. And some of the deliverables I think we're looking from it is we're going to come up with a ton of new ways to do discovery. We're going to really hone in on the metrics that matter to these buyer personas. And obviously, it's not just going to be content that comes out of this. We're going to have to do some type of changes to our pitch deck with product marketing. We're going to have to make some changes to the way we do discovery. And that's a huge behavior shift. So we're going to need to work on a really, probably a multi-week training initiative around, hey, how do we do new discovery? And then how do we get managers up to speed on coaching and reinforcing this new way of approaching discovery? There's a lot of work to be done there. And it really excites me because while it's an enablement-led program, the effort isn't enablement. The training or the facilitation, should I say, isn't enablement-led. And so the last thing I'll say here is I think in my early enablement career, I used to think that I have to produce all the content or I have to lead and facilitate all the training. But the value that we bring as enablers oftentimes is that we're not the subject matter expert. Oftentimes, I'd much prefer to hear from a peer of mine on why they're winning and how they're managing their sales cycles better than I am and what's working for them versus somebody in an enablement role that, sometimes I think sellers see enablement individuals as purely theoretical, purely conceptual. And so, the huge value that enablement can bring, right, is designing really engaging learning experiences. That's what we're doing with the webinar. But at the end of the day, after this, we're going to be really working closely with a small team of reps to test and iterate the new messaging, get those gong snippets that show that the new messaging is working, and then have them present it back to the rest of the go-to-market org. Should definitely help with buy-in and adoption, but really stoked about it. And that's some of the ways we're meeting the moment today at Lattice.
Love that. And when we were meeting before the webinar, Mallory had a really great statement about how long it takes sometimes to create change. And Jonas, I think you talked about this being a 3-quarter initiative, which is a long time. It feels like a long time. It's like, we need people to shift and change, but it may take us three or 4 quarters to do that. Mallory, I'd love the RevOps perspective on this and for you to kind of share your warning with the enablement folks, with the folks on the webinar here today too.
Yeah, I think that we got onto that topic because we were talking about starting a new year and having this macroeconomic climate that's different. And many of us are changing our message, and that's appropriate because you have to be able to react to what's happening in the world. So Nylas is no different. Our platform kind of has 2 major value props. One is that it gives you additional functionality for your own product, and it gives you ways to interact with your customers, whether that's like email or calendar, whatever. But the other major value prop is that you can save a lot of time and money by tapping into, an API instead of building something yourself. So as you can imagine, with the way that the market is shifting right now, everyone's looking for efficiency and everyone is looking to understand the best way to do more with less. And so we are looking to, shift the message to lean into that opportunity. So it's definitely the right thing to do, but as we'll get to later, we have to find ways to measure whether or not we think it's working, and we have to give it time to work. So often we will make a big change 2 months later. We want to know, did it work? And, the answer is not that simple. It's like, first, I have to give you the certainty that everyone's doing it the same way. Then I have to give you the certainty that there are no other confounding factors that are causing our success beyond like this primary thing that we took on as an initiative. And then I can tell you if I think it's working. And if you are changing that message quarterly, you will never give it time to work. So back to that change management standpoint, I think we need to be careful we need to give ourselves room to have time to make things work and still be reacting to everything that's going on in the market. Easier said than done, but I guess the warning there is just don't have a knee-jerk reaction if it takes a couple of quarters for this like brand new messaging to really take hold and see the impact.
Aaron, before you jump in, can I
Jump
add
in,
something
yeah.
to that? Mallory, what Mallory just said, I think is so important, that you have to give it time to simmer. If you're in cooking, if you want something to marinate, you got to give it time. And I think Jonas mentioned discovery. That is such a crucial skill, but it doesn't come overnight. And I just want to reiterate what I shared in the chat with everyone, which is peer-to-peer learning and allowing your reps to work with one another, hear one another, execute great discovery and it could be any skill, but I think that one's so relevant to this current conversation we're having. It's just you can't do enough when it comes to discovery with your reps, because it will just pay dividends. And it doesn't matter if they're in services or if they're salespeople or sales engineers or customer success managers. That skill is so applicable across so many roles and will just pay dividends back into your organization. And I think it also helps with that customer voice that somebody had asked about, and Jonas had mentioned it as well in the chat, which I think is like the more discovery you can get and the more like examples of that customer like perspective, it just is. I can't say enough about how much it's going to pay into your organization. So sorry, Aaron, to jump in there. I just wanted to double click on what Mallory was saying with needing time to let things really evolve and get to that place where people are becoming experts in a skill or a change or whatever it may be.
So true. And I love your point about it's not just kind of the acquisition part of the sales process where discovery is important. It's throughout the entire customer life cycle, because ultimately why somebody bought originally may not have anything to do with the problems or the challenges that they're facing today. And if our customer success and account management teams aren't able to kind of rediscover what is important, you'll definitely put those renewals and expansions at risk. And so it's so important not to just think about the front end, but the entire journey through the process and that continuous learning that needs to happen with our customers and prospects. So Mallory kind of teed up measurement. That was actually our next topic. As I talk to so many enablement leaders across the country, measurement of enablement effectiveness tends to be that thing that is just so hard to figure out and to nail down. And you said something, Mallory, that really interested me around how do you remove the noise of the things that could be driving performance and tie it back to the program that enablement's running? Like, what is the process to do that? And what are the measures that each of you guys look at to know whether your programs are working? And I guess over what time scale, given that we've all said it doesn't happen overnight. So I'll pass it to Mallory first.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that you could go a lot of directions with this. To piggyback on what Josh mentioned as well, maybe I'll start at the end. So the time it takes to measure simple things can be long. So if you have major changes that you're making to discovery, that's going to happen pretty early in the process. But let's say it takes another 90 days to close the deal, another 60 days to get onboarded. You may not see the fruits of that until 6 months later. So we do have to keep in mind that little changes at the beginning of the cycle, they should make the cycle better all the way through, but it's more measurable later. So that's just kind of giving the amount of time, and that's going to be dependent on your organization and your sales cycle. And so I would make that very custom to your business to understand how long you think it takes. But one thing that I like to try to measure up front is just, are we all doing this the same way, or at least close to the same way? Because if I can't understand whether or not everyone has adopted a practice, I can't tell you if the result is due to that adoption or it's hazy and it could be due to many other things. You're never going to remove all of the noise. That's just the unfortunate the situation that I think we will all be in, especially with the dynamics of macroeconomics and all of those things going on. But I first look to measure to see if everybody understands the change, Then I look to measure to see if everyone has adopted the change. So that could be, codified through Salesforce. If I can see that all of these fields have all of the right data, I can check a box. I can provide like a little formula with a progress report to show, yes, on this opportunity, we have collected all the information that we think we need. We've got the completeness of the thing that we were trying to get, from discovery, perhaps. Once I know that everyone is doing it, I can start to look at outcomes. And I think there are a lot of ways to do that. It could be listening, it could be joining calls, it could be getting feedback from people that are trying this method directly, but it's also trying to get it codified or automated through listening. So understanding, the topics that are coming up on calls, the keywords from emails, and then really just doing a simple A/B test to understand when we talk about this thing, we are winning X% more of the time. Or when we do this one step the way that we think we need to, we make it to the next stage 3 times better. So looking for the milestones along the way, and then also looking for the completeness of the launch, I think are 2 important aspects.
Jonas, what would you add? And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you said you're basically piloting something before you launch it. I think that's a great way to know whether something's working or not too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really passionate about measuring things, and I feel like there's so many tangents I can go on here, but I think like in specific regards to the program that we're running right now, where we're bringing in the external like Lattice buyers, and we're doing an internal webinar. I'm a huge fan of rolling things out to reps that are fully baked and tested. Whenever I roll something out to reps, like you do have to lead with the why. So like, why are we making this change and what's in it for you? And it's so important to do that, like, hence why we're testing a lot of our new messaging and new discovery flows and maybe some pitch deck updates with a small group of reps, is we want to ensure that across different segments and across different regions, it's landing before we prescribe something to the greater org. And it's going to help with buy-in, right? When you're able to say, again, hey, here's some examples of your peers where this is working, this is landing. We've done analysis and forecasting on why we think this is the best path forward. And it's only, again, going to help with buy-in. So I'm a huge fan of the testing and iterating concept. Whenever you do any type of beta group or a tiger team, whatever you want to call it, I'm also a huge fan of leveraging sales managers. You can build the best enablement training in the world. You can build the best content in the world. You can be a really good enablement program manager. But at the end of the day, if your frontline managers aren't bought in and they're not reinforcing what happened in the enablement training, or they don't feel comfortable on the messaging or coaching required from them to support the change, your efforts are going to fall short. And so I think those are just two things to be really mindful of to ensure that your enablement programs are, impactful, they're successful, they get adopted. In regards to like specifically enablement effectiveness, again, I'm a huge fan of just looking back at like the business outcome that we were trying to drive through the program. So if we wanted to improve top of funnel conversion, that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at, hey, how many of those at bats, those first calls that we had, that AEs or account executives had, how much of that's actually converting in a pipeline? And is that going up month over month or quarter over quarter? It's a very important metric to look at. However, there's a lot of different inputs that go into that. And this is where I think measuring enablement effectiveness gets tricky, is because you have to level set on a few things. I like to level set with leadership on how long it's going to take the change to occur. When you're making really, really complex behavior changes, you're totally teaching reps a new way to do things. You're not updating something, but you're completely undoing or unlearning and then learning something new. It takes time for that behavior change to become automatic. A lot of people say 21 days, the rule of thumb. Research shows that the average is it takes 66 days to learn a new behavior. And for more complex behaviors, it takes 254 days for that to become automatic. So I like to level set with leadership that, hey, it's going to take a while for us to see lagging indicators like win rates or, hey, even top of funnel conversion improve. What enablement can control and managers can control in the meantime is content utilization, training attendance, how many gong scorecards or how many coaching conversations are actually happening per week between the manager and the rep. When you really focus on those inputs in the first 30, 60, 90 days of a program, the lagging indicators will fall into place if you scope everything correctly.
Love that. Josh, you've been talking about outcomes this whole time. I think you've been talking about how to find the customer outcomes, but I'm assuming you're also looking at how we drive seismic outcomes and measure the effectiveness of your programs. Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like at Seismic.
Yeah, I'll take you on a bit of a journey from when I first joined the company to where we are now. When I first joined, we have tons of insights and tons of data when we think about our programs that we've launched, from completion scores to attendance to engagement with the content that we're producing. And so where we were when I first joined was looking at that data against results from our top reps. How are our top reps engaging with a lesson or a piece of content, or how many live sessions did they attend, whatever the data point may be. And like Jonas said, there are a lot of inputs. There's no direct tie. It's not like we ran this enablement program, now everyone closes deals 500K or greater. Like it's like, I wish it were that simple, but we know it's not. So we use those to find the trends. And where we've evolved to now, which I'm really excited about because this is a new team within our enablement org, is it's an activation and effectiveness team. So when we take programs to our teams, to our go-to-market teams, we have a whole team who's dedicated now to focusing on all of the data behind that, whether it's gong trackers or whether chorus, I think is what we use now. Sorry, chorus trackers, gong, whatever it is. But using those conversational intelligence tools, using the data we have and seeing how it's trending. And yes, it takes time, but having that team to really focus on the effectiveness of the programs is really important. Plus getting the feedback. When I first joined, again, a bit of an evolution, I was just getting feedback from the field and I would have to share it and bubble it up to the right teams. And now this activation team is going to be really focused on getting feedback from our field team members and synthesizing that to iterate on the initiatives that we have rolling, or the content that we have, or the next live training that we're going to run with. So I think that piece of the measurement is that like tactical approach has been really is going to be very pivotal in how we shift our kind of how we focus on our team's effectiveness as we go into this next fiscal. I also wanted to double click on what Jonas said about, and Mallory put it in the chat as well, on tiger teams and how important those can be to getting stuff into the hands of the people who need to consume it, to get some initial feedback so you can iterate. My manager's on the call actually right now, and she mentioned like that our perfection can be our kryptonite. It can really kill any motivation. Hi, Megan. It can really kill any motivation or any like progress that you have with your content. And I've abided by this rule too, where let's get 75%, 80% of the way, and then let's launch it and see what happens. And I think when we do that, we can see what kind of impact it's going to have on our field. We have an account manager Tiger team that I roll stuff to, and I get their feedback on it before we push things out to the broader audience. So we make sure that it's going to be pretty close, and then we continue to iterate on it. So wanted to highlight that because I think that's also about the effectiveness piece when it comes to your programs that you're launching. It is really a great idea, and it can be a super light lift. For those of you in the audience who don't use Tiger teams yet, I would highly advocate for that as part of your motion when you think about enablement and how to roll out your programs. It can be a once a month, sync with that small group, share content that you're producing, that you're working on, and getting that feedback can be huge to the overall impact of your programs.
Man, +1 on that. I think it's awesome. And it's a great like development learning opportunity for those participating in the Tiger team. I think a lot of reps are looking for something else, an extracurricular activity to get more involved in the business, to continue to learn. And we all know, maybe you don't know, but I know when you have to teach something to somebody else or you take that ownership, you learn it so much better yourself. And so you're kind of driving effectiveness through that level of engagement throughout the team, which is great. I was thinking about this. So, we're real, we know CSAT, we know NPS, those are common metrics. I was like, what if we have an ESAT, an enablement satisfaction score? And I was looking at someone in the chat, Jonathan Barker, training completion rates, assessment scores, pre and post training surveys. There's a lot of different ways that are maybe not as hardcore of a KPI that Mallory would be looking at, but that can kind of give enablement, those leading indicators about how well are our programs working in the eyes of our participants. And so maybe we all work together to come up with an ESAT framework so that we can do some type of internal measure about how our enablement programs are landing. And if we come up with a good format, we can just share it with each other. But I think surveys are a great way to do that pre-post and during the programs. And across all the different types of ways that we enable, right? So how's the training going? How's the coaching with your leader going? How's the content? Really being able to break that down. And over time, is it, thinking back to that very first slide that we looked at, is it increasing the confidence of the sales team? Are they more confident at their ability to hit their numbers and their quotas? I think if we're improving the confidence and we're seeing the indicators of our programs going well, the revenue will follow. So that's my little plug.
I was
Okay.
actually just getting ready to say something about confidence ratings, Aaron, because I think that's another great way to just get a pulse check on how are people feeling in the field. And if they're honest with you and they say like, I feel pretty bad, like I'm really struggling in my role, then you know that either your programs aren't hitting the right note, or that there's just another gap that you weren't aware of when it comes to that like level of confidence. So I love that you mentioned that.
Confidence is huge in sales. I always tell new folks to sales who maybe never sold before, it's an emotional, psychological roller coaster. There's very high highs and very low lows. And it's all about how to keep that steady in between. And confidence is a big key. If you're not confident in what you're doing, how you're doing it, it's going to show through on your customer conversations. So I know we're about to run out of time, and I wanted to end on something fun. So our theme at Ambition this year is Be Greater. And so I would love to hear from each of the panelists how you plan to be greater in 2023. It doesn't have to be businessy, it can be personal, whatever you want to share with the team. My personal goal for being greater is really increasing my networking. So I think after the pandemic years and everybody being remote, we've kind of lost touch. So I'm making a big effort to get out there and do a lot more networking and reconnecting with old friends and colleagues. So that's mine. Mallory, how about you go next?
Oh my. I think so I am a mom, and so I'm constantly fighting the urge to just go to the mom answer right away. But definitely would like to improve my own ability to just be present in whatever I'm doing. So less multitasking in a meeting and keeping the phone totally put away during the evening with my kids. Giving my team totally undivided attention during a team meeting, all those types of things, just being really present in the moment, tackling what's in front of me, and getting more efficient in my own work day, I think would be awesome.
I hear that. Jonas, what about you?
I love that. Let's see. Aside from like drinking more water and like I kick off therapy again, like those are two big personal ways to become greater.
Put the water down for me too.
Yeah, I got my Hydro flask right here, so we're staying hydrated. Hydrate to dominate. Another hoodie slogan. There you go. Let's see. Professionally though, I'd say like, I think, well, and just like life in general, like I never want to get comfortable with the way I'm doing things. And I've been doing like, I'm not like an early adopter enablement. Like I've been doing enablement for 20 years. Yeah, no way. But I've been doing it for a few years now, which at this point is like, you're kind of, it's kind of like you're a startup vet. Like once you hit like a year at a high growth company, it's like, oh, you're a veteran now. It's kind of that way in the enablement space. But I never want to think that my way is the right way of doing things, or grow too comfortable with, oh, let's, cookie cutter paste these things that worked over here and do them over here. And a great way to, I think, get out of that headspace is just broaden your external network. I try to talk to, as much as I love Laticians and the work we're doing at Lattice, I try to talk to as many enablement people and go-to-market leaders at companies that aren't Lattice. And again, just like a good life thing as well, for me to just broaden my experience outside of what I've done and what I see as the normal way. So yeah, that's I'd say that's another one.
Love that. Josh, bring us home.
You bet. So I was thinking that maybe the theme for 2023 for me is elevate. And there's a personal and a professional side to this, so I'll share both. On the professional side, I have a professional coach, which I've never had one before. And just to help me elevate myself when it comes to what my purpose is, how I approach my work, how I interface with the people that I work with, and just generally want to continue to think about pushing myself and kind of, to Jonas's point, like not getting comfortable with where I am and continuing to find ways to elevate myself. So that's on the professional side. On the personal side, I'm a bit of an endurance athlete. I have 4 races planned this year. So I've got the Austin Marathon coming up in a few weeks. Then I've got a half Ironman in Luxembourg in the summer, which is super exciting. I'm really excited about that. I've got a full Ironman in California in the fall. And then I'm hoping to wrap it up with a final marathon at the end of the year in December back in California. So my being greater is to hopefully survive all 4 of those races and continue to get PRs along the way. So yeah, that's mine.
That's impressive. I might work out once this month. We'll see how it goes. Loved talking with all of you guys today. This was such a great conversation. In the chat, I did want to plug, it seems like a lot of folks want to do some networking. Ambition is hosting an enablement Monday meetup. So join that super casual talk, with a bunch of enablement friends about various topics. We had our first one yesterday and it was great. So thank you, everybody. I think all of these materials will come out in email. Of course, reach out to any of us on LinkedIn to continue the conversation. And thank you all so much for coming and enjoying this conversation with us. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.